games with me. It was never about the fame to me. They needed the best, so they came to me. Whoa, who the best in this thing?
All right. How's everybody doing? Wait, kind of weird to ask that after that video, right? First, before I get started, I want to do a quick thing. Give it up for our first 3 speakers of the day, everybody. We figured it out professionally, and now we're going to do a little figuring out personally. Who's ready to get real? Good stuff. Thank you. 3 people in the back. So yeah, it's interesting, the concept of that video. Those offhanded remarks, right? If you're familiar with Think 3D, which most of you are, your friends, your clients, your partners, you know that we train a lot on catching the offhanded comment. And it's interesting, we train on that, and the reason we train on it is because there's so much truth in those. People hide a lot of truth in those offhanded comments. I'm tired. How you doing? I'm here. There's a lot of what I like to call reluctant presence in those comments. We're here, but we're not happy to be here. Those comments, those things are like glimpses into our icebergs, right? Those are glimpses into what's happening below the surface, and we all have things happening below the surface. So I want to challenge you guys, the next time you're in public or you're at work or you're with people, be aware of that. Catch those offhanded comments. Look for those glimpses into the icebergs, because it's important. It's really important. What we're going to do today is a little different. I don't have a deck. I don't have slides. We're going to take a glimpse into my iceberg. I'm going to tell you guys how I figured it out and am figuring it out. And to do that, I want to rewind to CultureCon 2019. It's on a smaller stage, on a different stage, but we had many of you in this room. It was a great year for Think 3D. CultureCon 2019 was a big event, one of the biggest professional wins of my career, especially at Think 3D. And we would go on after CultureCon to do a lot of cool stuff. One of the things that I'm the most proud of over the last 2 years is the starting and the growth of what was a side project and is now a full team we call Thinker Networks. Vonnie and I started Thinker Networks, just a couple of guys, a couple of shitty microphones in a studio about the size of your 8-foot tables. We didn't know what we were doing, but we were figuring it out. Today, Thinker Networks has 2 full-time videographers and editors. You'll see these young men run around here. Some of the most talented creatives in Sioux Falls that I know. We've done live streams for friends, for organizations. One of my favorite projects that we did was the Lev It in Your Living Room series. We got over 250,000 live views in 7 continents. I think the number is just over 50 countries, I want to say. Even locally with the Downtown Sioux Falls Rotary Club, shout out to any Rotarians in the room today, we've done live streams for their meetings, where we've brought some of the most influential leaders from our community, our state, and even our country together over the last 2 years of what has been some pretty tumultuous times to have really, really intentional conversations. And over 230,000 people tuned into those conversations in 2020 alone, just on the live. Now, these numbers aren't huge, but they're impressive for us. We're proud of the growth. Our team is more than tripled in size. We run 2 full-time video and audio production studios. We have an office. We have a team of 7. That's the top of our iceberg. It's the top of my iceberg. See, in 2019, what was below the surface for me was one of the most difficult personal times I've ever had in my life. I was working through a marriage that was falling apart, and as a result of that, was dealing with some depression, which wasn't something new for me, but it was worse than usual. I was dealing with a lot of anger, and it came to a head in 2020, early 2020, where I almost made an attempt on my own life for what would have been the 3rd time. You see, my iceberg goes deeper than just the last 2 years. It's older. When I was 15, I put a gun in my mouth and I pulled the trigger, and it didn't go off. Nothing short of an act of God. It feels weird to tell that to a room of 500 strangers. I've not told that to really anybody in my life, so thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, we're here, right? Which is the important thing. And fast forward to 22, when after concluding my college career with a victory lap, and if most of you are high achievers, so you probably don't know, a victory lap is a 5th year. So I had to do it 5th year. I was coming out of college and I was dealing with a lot of, basically the repercussions of what I had done when I was 15 and the track that put me on. But I decided to make another attempt on my life, this time with alcohol and medication. And if it wasn't for the swift actions of a friend who intervened when he did, I wouldn't be here in front of you today. Now, it's interesting because without going through those two things, I wouldn't have made it through the last 2 or 3 years. I had a deep iceberg. I had a lot of things to figure out. But something was different about the last 2 years and going through that. I realized, and there's something you realize when you make an attempt on your life and you fail. There's also something that you realize when you make an attempt on your own life more than once and fail. You start to ask questions. And one of those questions is, what the hell? Why am I here? There must be a reason. And then you realize I got to figure it out. And that's what I did. This last time, over the last 2 or 3 years, working through depression, working through a difficult time, I did it differently. One of my good friends and colleagues, Vonnie, challenged me one time and said, Dan, you have a weird gift to reflect on something you're going through, know you're going through it, and articulate it. And so what I did is I started documenting the process. And here's a few of the things that I learned along the way. Here's how I figured it out. One of the earliest things that I realized, and I was forced to realize this, was that sometimes it's okay just to get by. Any LOT folks out there, or folks that have gone through mentoring, or clients of ours, we're going to know it might be a little counterintuitive to what we train on a lot. We talk about achievement. We talk about maximizing. Take it from someone who knows. Sometimes all you can do is get by and make it to the next day, and that's okay. See, I was forced to learn that because in 2019, right around the time that we ended CultureCon, I had nothing left. And I happened upon this kind of visual, this kind of metaphor that got me through, all the way up until today, really. But I had this visual, and I couldn't get it out of my head, but it felt like I was on a boat, and I had just blown my engine, right? You're on a big lake, motorboat, just blown my engine. I was dead in the water, and I couldn't go anywhere, and I couldn't move. In that moment, though, I was able to look up and look across the lake and realize there's a lot of other people who have blown their engine. A lot of us are redlining. A lot of us are working really hard. Some of us are just bailing water out of the boat. But I was able to realize that, and that gave me clarity. And with that clarity, I found a new perspective. I realized that I can't find another gear. And if any of you have known me for a while, you know that that's kind of my thing. If someone can just find another gear, it's me. I'll get through it. But back then, I couldn't. And I realized that I had to do less, better. I couldn't run my engine, so I picked up a paddle. We have a concept at Think 3D we call the concept of 51%. And a lot of the times, 51% refers to your contribution to the culture. Are you on this side of positive? In order to figure it out, in order to get through it, sometimes you have to operate at 51%. And what I mean is you have to be trying. You have to do something. But you have to be trying because if you're done trying, you're done. After I made that realization along the way, I kind of realized with some reflection that I was looking at my past, looking at my experiences, looking at the things that were in my life wrong. I was looking at them as losses. And they weren't, at least not to me. They were victories. You see, to figure it out and get through a difficult time, you have to remember that your winning record against hard times, against difficulty, against mental illness, against whatever it is 100%. If you're in the room, if you're in this chair, you did it. You won. Your winning record is 100%. The only hard day was yesterday. We'll come back to that. And when I realized that I'm stronger than I know. You are stronger than you know. When working through a hard time, realize that it feels like you're tired. It feels like you can't. It feels like you're too weak to go on. But you've been doing all that up until this point. And that's something I had to learn and I had to realize. The last thing that I learned, this is going to sound kind of harsh, but I had to operate under the mentality that no one was coming to save me. This goes back to putting your paddle in the water and getting after it. One of my favorite authors, Marcus Aurelius, said, toss away life's empty hopes, get busy with life's purpose, and become an active participant in your own rescue. Now I'm paraphrasing, so don't quote me on that exactly, but the idea there is you have to be involved. It's not just going to happen without you. You have to fight, and you have to try. You may not be moving at the speed that you normally move. You may not be able to use your engine at full bore, but you have to move forward. That's the only thing you can do in those situations. That's how I figured it out. That's how I put it together. And through that journey of realizing, okay, I'm here, I don't have another gear, I can do something. Something is better than nothing. When I realized that I wasn't alone, and if you were at CultureCon 2019, about 25% of the room we surveyed anonymously, about 25% of the room said, I've struggled with suicidal thoughts or depression. Now, that's a statistic that doesn't make you feel good, but it makes you feel even worse when you realize that this happened in the room. These were our friends, our coworkers, our neighbors, our family. And so I got to thinking about being an employer and leading people through this, and a couple of things that I learned that I want to share with you going through this firsthand on both sides of the coin. When you're leading people, it's important to create a space where it's okay to try. This is ugly stuff. It's messy stuff. Even on the worst days, even on the best days, it's still not easy. But as an employer, I encourage you to create a space where people can try. Back to that 51%. It's important. It's important for people to know that when they enter your space, when they enter your team, hey, I see you. I know you're not at your best. I don't expect you to fake it to be at 100% all the time, but I do expect you to be trying. You have to create that space, and they have to know that they are safe to try and maybe fail. The other thing that's important as an employer is to embrace and support the process. Recovery is not easy. Neither is trust. Vani always says, and it's one of my favorite sayings, but trust is like a parachute. Everybody wants it, but they don't want to use it. It's not easy. I can tell you that firsthand. But what's something that we did at Think 3D early on when I was going through some very difficult times is we trusted each other. I was given trust. I broke it. I dropped the ball. I was given it back again. We made it work. It wasn't easy, but we embraced the process and we supported the process. When you have someone going through a difficult time, let them know, I see you, I'm here for you, and we're along for the ride. The second thing to that is you have to level, and you have to be honest. Because these things are difficult to talk about at times, but as an employer, you have to be super honest with that. You can tell someone, hey, I have no idea how to fix what's going on at home with you. I have no idea how to help, but I want you to know that I'm going to try. Some of the most impactful conversations to me that happened both as a leader perspective to a team member and as a team member from my leader were conversations that were extremely, extremely honest. Get candid, get real, be honest, even if it's weird. I want to say a couple of things to anyone in the room who's going through it. You're here. You did it. You're stronger than you realize. You can do this, right? You have won 100% of the engagements with the rest of your iceberg. We together can figure out how to go forward. I don't know what everyone's going through, and it might not be as heavy as some of the stuff that I've shared, but it doesn't matter if it's as heavy as or not. Everyone is going through something, and especially after the last 2 years, you better believe in a room this size, I know more than a few of you are just tired. So what I want you to know is you have to keep going. You have to grit your teeth and figure out how to do something. You're not alone. Part of that fight, part of realizing that you have to put a paddle in the water and go somewhere, is asking for help. You got to do it. But together, we can grit our teeth, and together, we can figure this out. Thank you.